Hello and welcome to this Listen and Learn podcast sponsored by Hospice of Central Ohio Volunteer Services. I'm Liz Adamschick, Manager of Volunteer Services and your host for today. Joining us is Krystal Glancy, one of our patient care specialists, and we look forward to hearing from her all about what she enjoys and knows from working with her patients and families. Thank you for joining us. At our new volunteer training sessions, we have a module called the IDG panel, or Interdisciplinary Group Panel, where we gather members of the interdisciplinary team, the nurse, the social worker, the chaplain, the patient care specialist, what was formerly known as the hospice aide, and a patient companion to help our newest volunteers understand a bit more deeply what the roles of each of those disciplines are. So today we wanted to focus in on the role of the patient care specialist, and as I mentioned earlier, we are glad to have Krystal Glancy with us to tell us a little bit about her work in this area. Krystal, so glad that you're here. Thank you. I know you're coming in at the end of a long day, I'm sure, or in the middle.
At the end of a long day, but yes, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Probably best to begin at maybe the beginning of your hospice story. Tell us a little bit about what drew you to want to work in a hospice setting and in the role that you're in.
Well, I was working at a nursing home here locally in Newark, and I worked alongside with our hospice members, and they told me how great, what a great organization it was, and the time that they really get to spend with our patients, that they weren't rushed, They didn't have 15 people to take care of in 8 hours, they had all the time they needed for that patient. Whatever they needed, that's what the time they had. And it just really compelled me to want to be able to give more of myself to people who really need that extra special attention.
Right. Tell me a little bit more. As a patient care specialist, and I know that's our new term. We used to refer to folks in your position as hospice aides, but we've since changed that to maybe more accurately reflect the kind of work that you do. But tell me a little bit more about what exactly that role entails. What do you do for the people in your care?
Sometimes it's a shower, sometimes it's a bed bath, sometimes it's not anything personal care related. Sometimes it's just sitting and listening. And then there's days where if the patient doesn't want a shower or doesn't want a bath, then we'll polish their nails or curl their hair. We'll do whatever the patient wants, that's going to make them feel better about themselves and feel better just in general.
Wonderful. And about how many patients would you say you see in a week? Because I know your position in particular, you're what's called a float. And so that means you're kind of there to help fill any gaps or be with patients that might need what you've got to provide.
Typically, we see 8 patients a day. So you spread that out between 5 days. Some days it's more, some days it's less. It just depends on where I'm needed and how soon I can get there. So,
do you ever see the same patient more than once in a week?
Once in a while, if I'm covering someone's vacation or somebody is sick and I'm covering, a long, illness that they have, I'll see that patient for a while until the other team member gets back from either vacation, being ill, or just taking time off. So,
yeah, that makes sense. I can imagine, or I can only imagine, when my father was in hospice care, we came to really appreciate the role of his aides and the people that provided his personal care, almost to the point where we were, as a family, saying, wow, this really helps us sleep at night. Because we know that he's getting what he needs. He's getting the kind of care that we weren't able to provide, even just physically. We weren't able to provide that kind of care for him. What do you hear or what do you sense from the patients and families that you care for with regard to the impact that you have in their lives? How do you know that you're making a difference? How do you know that your presence and your support makes things better for them?
It's just amazing. Just knowing how important we really are to those families and patients. I had a patient who passed a week that I was on vacation. And the same Monday I got back, she knew what days I was going to be, his wife knew what days I was going to be gone. And the same Monday I got back, she had called the office and said, please let me talk to Krystal, please. They dispatched her through.
Right.
The first probably 10 minutes of our phone call was me just sitting there listening as she sobbed. I'd had her husband for a little over 6 months.
Wow.
And I was the only one allowed to come.
Okay.
They just got very particular, and they really liked the care that I gave. And so when he passed, I wasn't there. and I wasn't even at work that week. And
Right.
just being there, listening to her sob, yes, it was very sad, but it also made me feel so incredibly humble and honored that she still wanted to make sure that I knew that her husband had passed. That was the goal of her phone call was, Krystal, did you know that he passed on Wednesday when you were gone? And I said, yes, I did. And I said, I'm so sorry I couldn't be there for you.
Yeah.
And she said, I just don't know what I'm going to do now without you guys being in my home.
Oh.
She really got close to me and the nurses that would come out and see him and the social worker as well. So it's a big life change for them when their loved one does pass.
Right.
But it's a great feeling for myself, and I know other team members too, to know exactly how important we really were at their loved ones, end of their journey.
Right.
It makes you feel, it's undescribable how it makes you feel. It really, truly is.
Yep. Yeah. And I've heard that too. And I think one of the reasons why we like the IDG panel as part of the training is that each discipline gets to present his or her unique aspect of that end-of-life care. And everybody's got something unique to bring to the table. What I'm wondering is what you see different about your role from the nurse, the social worker, the chaplain, the patient companion. What makes your role unique? What spot do you fill that no one else on that team can?
Well, as a, patient care specialist, we see patients at their most vulnerable. They are unclothed, obviously, so they can get a bath.
Right.
We see pieces and parts of them that their families will never see and hope that they never have to see.
Right.
So it's a whole different respect, I think, families and patients have for us. And the same with our other team members, because we're doing something that the chaplain or the social worker can't do.
Right.
So it really, us telling the nurses what we see when they're getting a bath or the different decline that we can see that they can't because the chaplain's not giving that patient a bath, so he doesn't know or she doesn't know that patient's becoming short of breath with, just shampooing her hair or getting dressed. They can't see those things because they're not doing those things. So it's really important, and it's so nice to be able to listen to everybody's viewpoints of how they see the patient.
Right. And what an essential part of someone's end-of-life experience to have those needs taken care of. I mean, I know how I feel if I've not been feeling well. It's in no way compares to having a terminal diagnosis, but I feel better after I've showered. I feel better after I've had a chance to get up and walk around, or if someone's done my hair, or if, I've had my nails polished. That's a wonderful sense of self-image, and hey, I feel human. And I would imagine that that's part of what you try to bring to the people that you care for.
I definitely, if my little old ladies, I try to make sure their hair is curled or their nails are polished, and I always make sure they match. I really get upset when I walk into a nursing home and they've got different colored sweatpants and an odd colored shirt. I want to make sure that they match because their dignity is still just as important as mine is. I wouldn't walk out of the house not matching. And, I just want the patient, I always call it dress up bath days because I always make sure they're dressed to the nines if it's possible with what they have in their closets. I think I feel better when I'm dressed up, and I know how good people feel when they are dressed up. They feel important. They feel like they have a purpose again.
Right.
And sometimes them at their end of life, they lose focus of what their purpose is.
Right.
And giving them feeling like they have a purpose again really makes their day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Such an intimate form of care, and I know that we all touch different levels of intimacy with patients, certainly in ways that would allow them to feel comfortable, allow them to trust us, and giving someone a bath, telling someone a story that you've never told anyone. That's the kind of intimacy we're talking about, is making sure that they know that they can trust us. I would imagine, too, that you see people who really struggle with losing their independence because of their physical decline. How do you handle that when you are meeting, say, a patient for the first time who really wants to do as much for himself as he can, but he realizes that that's a small window and he's not going to be able to do it for that much longer?
I really let the patient try to do as much as they can, even if it's something as simple as them washing their own face, and that's all they're able to do.
Okay.
And that's okay. I don't try to take away anybody's independence that they still have, because that's what keeps them going, still being able to do something for themselves. And the other part of their independence is if they don't want a bath, I don't make them take a bath. That's their right. And if they say, you know what, I just don't want a bath, that's still them being independent. That's still them having a choice and making a choice for their choice of what they want to do. And to me, that goes a long way. And I know sometimes families are like, oh, Mom, you need a bath. Mom, you need a bath.
Right.
Well, that's fine. She may need a bath. But at the same time, if she doesn't feel like it and doesn't, is not up to it, I'm not one to bully somebody into the bathtub. I had a woman last week that told me this is just stupid. Those were her words. And I said, well, why do you feel this way? And she said, I'm 94 years old. What did I do to get dirty from 2 days ago? And I said, I understand that. I respect that. And her daughter was, come on, Mom, you're not going to get another one till Friday. And she said, well, then Friday comes. If I stink, I'll get a bath. And she was she was not at all short with me, but kind of short with her daughter. And I said, that's fine. That's your choice. And, we can sit and talk, or I'll do whatever you'd like me to do. And she said, well, let's just sit here. And she had a cat, and she said, that's my cat. And she told me all about her cat. So it's really up to the patient. And I value that a lot because, 96 years old. I was always taught to respect my elders and to walk into a 96-year-old woman's room and say, you're getting a bath. I'm 30 years old. It is not my job to tell you you're getting a bath.
Right.
And I just feel like that's just a huge thing for people of that, generation. They were taught to respect their elders as well. And, I'm not going to have some young girl come in here and tell me, you're getting a bath, whether you want it or not, because that's not me and that's not how I was brought up. And I know that's not how they were probably brought up as well.
Do you think that makes hospice unique in the field of healthcare with so much emphasis on patient choice? And that maybe some of our patients and families aren't prepared to have that much choice given to them. I feel like we do that a lot. But from your perspective, what do you see in the patients and families being allowed to make those kinds of decisions for themselves?
I think it makes a huge difference. I've talked to other places, other hospices, staff, and they don't really give their patients a choice. If they don't get a bath, then, they spend about 5 or 10 minutes with them and they move on. Okay. Us, Hospice of Central Ohio, we stay with our patients, until they're done with us,
Right.
Whether it is getting a bath or whatever, it's just sitting there and listening. Or if it's just sitting there and holding somebody's hand. Or just sitting in complete silence and saying nothing. Because silence is golden. It really makes an extreme difference in a patient's day that you're just willing to sit in there with them so they're not alone. People facing the end of life, they're so scared. Most people are so scared of being alone and just having the presence of someone being there. And I don't feel like a lot of other hospices offer that. If they're not providing care, then their staff is out the door. And I feel like Hospice of Central Ohio is not like that. I feel like we are with that patient at the bedside or wherever they need us at until, their journey's over.
Right. And you've touched on something that I think is an easy to understand concept about end-of-life care theoretically, but when it actually comes to practicing it, it can be really difficult. And that's the value of our presence. I think we are, as a species, just driven more to be active. And so when folks come in and they want to volunteer, they want to work, I want to be busy, I want to be doing things. And our patients are at a point in their lives where their activity level is waning, and that's appropriate for where they are. And that whole concept of someone just coming and sitting and being with me is probably more valuable. Would you say that that's your experience? And if so, any stories about how you've been present to your patients as opposed to, bustling around them, doing things for them?
Absolutely. Not me personally, but I know a chaplain that works for us. We had a patient who lived on a dementia unit, and he just did not like men. And Mark would try, every week or every month to come and see this patient to give him some spiritual support. And it wasn't that he didn't want spiritual support, it's just that he was not fond of male nurses, he was not fond of male aides. And Mark got into a wheelchair and rolled up to see him, and that was the first conversation that patient would have for him with him. And it was just amazing to watch that, to stand back and watch and see what that difference was. Like, Mark is a tall man, and this guy, he was maybe 5 foot tall, just a little itty bitty man. And in a wheelchair, Mark even looks that much taller in a sitting position. So Mark got a wheelchair, rolled up to him, and that was the first conversation. And you heard the patient say, "Hey, buddy." And it was neat to be able to witness that and realize, or to see just that small difference of going to the patient's level. And that really, I will never forget that. Just simple things as sitting, not even, Mark had tried sitting down in a chair, a regular chair, and it didn't work. But sitting in a wheelchair, I think that patient felt more equal to Mark in general, because he's rolling around in the same wheels he was. So it made a big difference, and I will never ever forget that.
I know we meet people where they are when they come into our program, and that's such a core value for us. We don't push an agenda on them. We don't try to get them to see things our way, medically or otherwise. We accept people as they come in, and what a beautiful illustration of that. If our listeners can imagine in their mind's eye a facility with a chair next to the bed, and how our clinical staff doesn't stand over them during the visit, but actually pulls up a chair and makes it at least eye level, so that the patient doesn't have to hurt her neck trying to twist to see and make eye contact and all that. It's those little things that I feel make us different as an organization. We're also a teaching organization, and that basically means that, when we need to educate our families and our patients about the very detailed specifics of care, administering medicine, or how to turn somebody or reposition in bed, to who knows what, how to listen, how to talk to someone who's struggling with dementia. What does education look like from your view? What kinds of things do you teach families and patients to do in between your visits, or how do you help them understand, that part of their hospice experience when it comes to personal care?
I think we educate families and loved ones daily. Every little thing that, and even sometimes facilities. We've educated facilities, on different techniques or different things that we've used other places. I know working as an aide in a long-term facility, we always used draw sheets to draw people up in the bed so we weren't pulling on arms and legs. And showing families how to use a draw sheet. It's just a sheet folded, and you stick it underneath of them, and it makes their lives and their backs so much easier. So I think daily we teach our families different little tricks and skills that, they don't practice on a daily. We have, families who are very wealthy, and we have families who are very poor. And it's not like, a lawyer's going to know how to change someone. It's not like a McDonald's worker is going to know how to change someone. It's, there's different skills that we have that we've got to pass on to families, because we can't be there 24/7. And I think when we can teach people who aren't used to doing this kind of work every day, it really goes further, because then they feel like they're giving something back to the patient as well. They're be able to take, be able to take dad places, because I can help take him to the bathroom if he needs to go, or just being at home with dad while, mom runs to the store. I can stay home with dad and make sure he's clean and taken care of, as to where, it's just them being able to feel like they're doing something for the patient that's important.
Right. How important is that for some families, to feel like they're contributing, as opposed to us just swooping in and taking over, which isn't our way of supporting people? Why do you think it's so important for families to do what they can?
Well, I think it, goes back to, my mom took care of me, so it's my time to take care of my mom. The roles really reverse. And I think when kids are involved, taking care of their, parents, or even, nieces and nephews, taking care of older uncles and aunts, I think it's their way of giving back to them of all the love and all the things that they have showed them throughout their whole entire lives. So it's just beautiful. It's amazing.
Beautiful. Which is what patient-centered care is all about, and realizing that the patient is the center of a larger network, and we take care of as many people in that network as we can wrap our arms around. which is really good. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more with Krystal Glancy, one of our patient care specialists, about working in a hospice setting that most people would tend to find sad or depressing, and through the eyes of a hospice aide or patient care specialist, what joy you find in your work. So please come back and join us. We'll be right back. There are so many ways that you can help the people in our care, our patients, our families, and the communities we serve. Here at Hospice of Central Ohio, we're looking for people like you to volunteer in a variety of ways, from playing music to providing pet therapy to working with veterans. There are people in our care who need your active listening skills, your smile, and your compassion. We're also looking for people to help staff our events, work in one of our office locations, and help educate the community about all the services that Hospice of Central Ohio provides. So visit our website at www.hospiceofcentralohio.org and click on the volunteers link to learn more, or give us a call at 740-788-1404. Help us make life meaningful and precious for the people in our care. With your help, we can do just that. Welcome back. We're here with Krystal Glancy, one of Hospice of Central Ohio's patient care specialists. I'm Liz Adamschick, manager of volunteer services and your host for the Listen and Learn podcast series. Krystal, welcome back. We've talked so much about what your perspective, what your role is like as a patient care specialist, providing that kind of personal care for patients, what you see. And you gave us some really good insights and some good things for us to really reflect on. Something that I've wanted to ask for a while is, I don't know that I've ever had the chance to ask you this in the time that we've been working, but my sense is that most people who aren't in a hospice setting, as a volunteer, as a paid staff member, don't realize that this place can just be a joyful place. I think people view hospice and end-of-life care as a sad, depressing sort of place. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that assumption and how your patients bring you joy, and what is it that brings you joy in your work?
Well, it's definitely not sad. It's the complete opposite. It allows me to be part of their journey. They're allowing Hospice Central Ohio to be part of their story that they're writing. And it's such an honor to be able to, to know that they chose us out of all the other hospices and wherever they're from, they chose us. And to me, that's such an honor because they let us into their homes. They let us into their lives. They let us into their families. We're not just, oh, you're the aide that's coming today. A lot of our families and patients, they really look forward to us coming. They share with us stories that they're not able to share with their families, or they are too. Just different things that they're willing to share with us and let us be a part of. As Hospice Central Ohio, they want us to be there present, and then also at the end of life, whenever that patient has passed, they encourage us to go to calling hours, to go to funerals.
Sure.
And seeing patients' families, their faces when, the hospice aide came to Dad's calling hours. I've had families, hug me because that's just what we do.
Right.
And you didn't leave us. You didn't leave us even after the journey was over. You didn't leave us. And it's just so humbling to know that, we made that big of an impact, whether we've had that patient for a week or we've had that patient for a year. Just knowing that it's not sad, that we gave the family peace. We gave that patient peace, knowing that they didn't have to worry about their loved one having to give them a shower, because that's awkward for a son have to give his mom a shower or a daughter to have to give her father a shower. Us being able to do that really lightens their burden, and just the pure happiness and joy that they get from not having to worry about those things, just the little things that people don't think about every day that we do.
Right. And that raises a beautiful point about roles within the family dynamic of it's a privilege to care for my dad and to be in that role of caregiver, but I miss being his daughter. And I can't do both at the same time, no matter how hard I try. So in you come, or the nurse, or the social worker, or the chaplain, and I get the opportunity to sit back in that daughter seat while you all get to be the caregivers. And what a relief that must be for the family.
It is, because unlike the family, my shift ends when my work is done. Their shift never ends. Their shift goes on until their loved one's journey is over. So just that hour that we're there or could be there, that's an hour for them to sit down. That's an hour for them to run to the store. That's an hour for them to go do laundry that they didn't get done. You know, it's an hour for them to just, like you said, be the daughter or be the son. And it really makes a huge difference, you know, and I relate that to families whenever they get, you know, emotional or upset, like, am I doing everything right? What else can I do? You know, I'm so tired. And they're like, how do you keep doing this? How do you do this every day? And I explain to them, my shift ends when my shift is over. Your shift never ends. Your shift continues. You know, it's just being there and listening, and it makes a huge difference for the family and for the patients. The patients can hear what we're saying to their loved ones, and us being able to tell them it's okay, you're doing everything right, giving them reassurance. It makes a world of difference, because then it puts the patient at ease. Oh, okay, well, my daughter Susie's doing this right because the aide told her she was, so it must be okay. And you know, I think that really makes a big difference in their care and their journey.
Yeah. I have this image in my mind now of a family who knew enough about hospice to engage us, to take care of their loved one. But when it comes to the point where they actually say the words that we hear so often, I had no idea you did all this. When you describe that sort of break that you give them, I think that might be part of what they mean. It's one thing to know that hospice provides, you know, medical equipment if needed, that we're a 24/7 operation in terms of access to us if you need us, that you've got a whole new set of eyes on your team, whereas you might not have had that before. But those little nuanced moments of, yeah, because Krystal's here, I can go down the hall and take a nap. I had no idea that would be a hospice benefit as well. It's more than just the obvious medical stuff. And I think you've probably seen that they say, and we hear that, I had no idea.
We get that, you know, I can honestly say I probably hear that daily, if not weekly, you know, and along with our volunteer services, you know, some of our volunteers make hospital gowns for our patients to wear.
Right.
And in the homes, that's a big deal. Hospital gowns are expensive to go out and purchase from a pharmacy. And most people don't have, you know, sewing techniques. And for our volunteers to be able to make those things and make blankets and just little, you know, our busy blankets that they make for our other patients, it's just amazing. And
can I interrupt you real quick to describe to our listeners what a busy blanket is and why it's so important to have? I'm sorry, but I think that's a cool thing because it's fairly new in our handmade items program. So what is a busy blanket and why do we need them?
Sometimes they have zippers, they have buttons, they have just different things on them that it can be placed in their lap and it can keep them busy. Okay. Instead of being agitated or maybe going into another patient's room if they're in a facility and going through things that aren't theirs, it keeps them busy. It just keeps their fine motor skills going, you know, to create that independence that they still are able to keep.
Right, and to keep their hands occupied, which is really important. So if you don't mind, I'll give a little shout out to our handmade items team. We just had a delivery of gowns today, on the day that we're recording this, from Jonah, one of our volunteers who does that. And it's funny because one of the social workers was just asking me, do you know how often the gowns are delivered? And of course we don't have a schedule, and in comes Jonah with a bag full of gowns 5 minutes later. So that's the kind of cause and effect that just seems to happen organically in our work. And you're right, not everybody can sew. Gowns are expensive. This is something that people can do to help us out, so you don't have to be bedside to make a difference, I guess is what the takeaway.
Absolutely. And you know, when you bring in this beautiful gown or this beautiful blanket that someone has sewn, our families and our patients go crazy. Oh, well, I didn't know you guys did that. And I hear that so often. And, you know, I said, well, it's not just me. It's our hospice volunteers, too. They do a lot of this stuff behind the scenes that I feel like nobody really knows that they do. But it's just wonderful. And I wish sometimes our volunteers that, you know, are behind the scenes, that don't do patient companions, that they could see the patients' faces whenever we are able to deliver those things to them, that, you know, really makes a big difference, because wearing clothes when you're in a bed that you are not getting out of, that you're bedbound, and trying to pull, you know, pants up or trying to pull a sweater down is very uncomfortable. And hospital gowns aren't the most flattering thing.
Right.
But I can honestly say the gowns that our volunteers make us are usually a very pretty print or a very manly print, because we have manly prints as
Sure.
well.
Male appropriate fabric,
Yes.
if you will.
Sure. And it really makes a big difference. It's just like getting dressed up for them. It's,
Right.
they get to wear something pretty and or nice or handsome. And it really makes a big difference in their day.
And we've had that. We've had people request gowns for patients that would where the fabric pattern would reflect a particular hobby or a favorite that the patient would have, and how nice for them to be surrounded by something that brings them joy. And you're the one doing personal care who's going to be providing. So we know that a lot of our patient care specialists will keep a couple of gowns in the trunk of the car just in case. You never know what you're going to need when you go to visit with a patient. And so hopefully you've got the right sizes and all this stuff. So thank you for letting me take us off a little bit on a trajectory of handmade items. But I would imagine that of all of the, separate from patient companion, of all the volunteer jobs that we have, that's probably the one job that you're going to interface with the outcome on the most, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Sentence-wise. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because that would be really important. On the other side of joy, we certainly do understand the public view at times of hospice that we're sad and depressing. We do deal with death and dying and grief, in addition to celebration and life. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the challenges to your role, and what have you done to help cope with those challenges? Every job has them, but I would imagine they're very unique for you.
Well, we don't just take care of rich or wealthy people. We take care of anybody in the community that needs our services. And because of that, some places where homes that we go into aren't the nicest.
Right.
They are cold. Sometimes bills aren't paid. So, we go to where the patient, wherever the patient calls home. I've seen patients who have lived in hotels because that's where they called home. And so that's one of the challenges that we do face is sometimes the family doesn't have clean washcloths, doesn't have clean clothes to put on that patient. So we do the best with what we have. Sometimes we will, talk with our other team members and develop a plan as to, okay, so how can we get this guy some washcloths and some towels, and how can we get him, some clothes? That way the family has enough time to get laundry done if he only has just a couple of articles of clothing. And, we'll develop a plan, and then usually we are always able to solve that problem.
Wonderful.
And we can't help where somebody lives or how they live, but we can make the way they live a little bit better with us being there. And also, I like to try and provide as much privacy, too, for our patients. Sometimes families turn their living rooms or their dining rooms into somebody's bedroom.
Right.
And that's not very private when it's the center room of the home. So trying to keep them covered up, trying to make sure that they still maintain a little bit of independence, and having their space really makes a big difference, too.
Right. Our CEO, Kerry Hamilton, always does such a beautiful job when he describes in 3 words what it is essentially that Hospice of Central Ohio provides, and that's peace, comfort, and dignity. And I'm wondering if you could maybe say a little bit about how that looks in your work. How do you bring peace? And you've said it already in a lot of different ways, but if there's anything else that you wanted to add through that lens, that would be really wonderful.
I think peace is like one of the biggest things that we really do. Just being able to be there, I think, and make sure that the patient is peaceful when their journey is over. I know as a team we work together to make sure, that the right medications are on board, to make sure that the right care is given, to make sure the right equipment is in the home. That's going to make their journey that much more comfortable and peaceful. And dignity, too. I can honestly say that this is the most dignified company I think I've ever worked for.
Wonderful.
Kerry is a wonderful CEO. He really does care about patient care, and he really cares about his employees. And I feel that if you treat your employees as good as he does, they're going to give that much better care for their patients, and I truly see it. I have a grandmother who's on our hospice services, and seeing it from a family side really makes a big difference as to just being a worker, the worker bee, and being there and with my family making these decisions and knowing that hospice has, our family's support and all that stuff. It really makes a big difference, and you can really tell being on both sides of the spectrum, being a worker and then also being, a patient. It makes a huge difference.
It really does. Your days must be packed. And I wonder, in and around all that busyness, how do you take care of yourself? Because that's such an important part of being able to sustain the momentum and the energy that I can hear in your voice, that I hope our listeners can hear in your voice. What does self-care look like for you?
Well, short-term self-care for me is driving from patient to patient, because I'm spread over 9 counties.
Right.
Sometimes I'm in the same county, sometimes I'm not. But self-care for me, short-term, is listening to my radio and singing and dancing. And
car dancing, yes, very good.
And just because that is just a time where I'm by myself, and I can reflect on the last visit, and then also I can get away from the last visit, if it's a really stressful or really sad situation. Long term, my husband and I are starting a farm, so
nice.
I'm really excited about that. We love to go antique shopping. That's one of my favorite things to do.
Okay.
I collect mason jars and elephants, so it's always fun stuff to look for.
Be careful, our listeners are going to start sending you things. You've captivated them so much, there'll be a big UPS delivery of mason jars and elephants tomorrow. Just watch.
And I always make sure I take a special day at least once a month with my little girl, because I do work a lot of hours, but she knows what I'm doing. I've explained to her, Mommy's taking care of sick people who really need help. And when you hear your little girl say, Mommy, I want to help take care of sick people when I get big, it really melts your heart. And it lets you know that you're really doing the right thing. So her and I always spend one day together a month where it's nothing but we have a girls' day.
Nice.
And we may go to the mall, or we may just be at home and watch Disney movies all day. So, just little things like that really help with self-care. And talking to other team members, if we're having an issue with, a certain situation that's really hard, we talk to one another, and it really helps us get to a solution, and that really helps with self-care too, because then you're not taking that burden home with you. Once you've gotten a solution, puts my mind at ease, and I feel like, okay, we're definitely gonna do good for this patient, and it makes you just feel better.
Right. I don't think we could do what we do without that cohesive bond that our team setting provides. It isn't just a nice to have part of our organization. It's essential. Everybody plays a part. And I know that the people listening are a mix of folks in the community who have happened upon this podcast, and we're grateful. It's also people who are in the training process to become volunteers, and then certainly our active volunteers. And I don't know that there's any person or any role that we could do without on this team. And you've talked a little bit about the folks that work behind the scenes, people who do our events, people who talk to the community about who we are and what we do and what our patients really need. Can you imagine doing anything else, though, besides the job that you're in? As you imagine your career with hospice, do you see yourself continuing on?
I see myself being here forever. This is really a job that I love. I really, truly do love my job. And I think that really shows, because anytime I get called and said, hey, can you go see so-and-so, or hey, can you help out with this? My answer is always yes. And not because I have to, but because I want to. It's amazing to feel the feeling you get knowing that you're part of somebody's journey, that they're in journey at that. And just being a part of that, knowing that I can help or do any little part, it's amazing feeling. And it's not a job for me. It really is like a career, something I enjoy doing.
Wonderful.
And it's just an amazing feeling to feel like that every day, to be able to hop out of bed. I'm going to go take care of people today. It's not I'm going to work. I'm going to go take care of people today.
Wonderful. I know that you also are one of our faculty for the new volunteer training, and every time we've asked you, you've said yes. And I don't know how that works with your schedule. As I'm listening to you talk, I'm trying to imagine if you sleep at all. But what is it about being part of the training that you find so attractive? Because you've not just done it to help me out as a personal favor. You really enjoy it. I can see it when you're on the panel, when you talk to them.
Oh, I just love being able to talk to a fresh set of eyes and ears that are hopefully coming to help out with our volunteer services, and letting them know what a great organization this is, and why it's so great is not just because of paid staff, but because of our volunteer staff too. Even if you can't sew or you can't go, file through papers all day, but if you can go and sit with a patient or whatever your goal is for your volunteer services, it's just amazing. And to be part of that, to let them know how important they really are and what a big role hospice really plays in our community, especially Hospice of Central Ohio, that we play in our community and what we mean to patients and families, and getting to explain that to the soon-to-be volunteers, and just watching how their faces change, how the conversation changes from when we first get into the room. It's kind of stiff, and then as the night progresses, as we talk and share our stories with the family or with the volunteers about the families and patients, and how more open and flowing the conversations get. It's just amazing to be witness to that.
And it's wonderful to watch that happen as well, because you put them at ease. I think even our volunteer applicants at times may come in with some hesitation about, can I really do this? Am I strong enough? Am I too much of a crybaby? And we get that often enough to know that part of our job in volunteer services is to reassure people that you've got a deeper well to draw from than you might think. And I love that the interdisciplinary group panel will come in and put those fears to rest and remind folk that please don't think that because you're unpaid and you're not licensed in this profession that you're on the learning curve here. We all struggle with the moods, the emotions, the nature of our work. And so to kind of wrap up, because I could keep listening to you forever, and I know at some point you have patients you have to get back to, and I have volunteer applications I have to process, and I'm glad for that. What have your patients taught you about life? What has your work taught you about what matters? Anything along those lines that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Sometimes it's okay just to sit down and stop and smell the flowers. I think a lot of us get busy in our day-to-day tasks, the things that we think we need to get done, whether it's, go to work, pay the bills, clean the house, make dinner. And, our patients they've done all those things. They've ran through life. And now it's time for them where their time is getting shorter. And I think, they'll tell us, sit down for 5 minutes before you start my bath, because they know that we're busy. But it's okay to sit down and take a break. It's okay it can wait. It can wait. And that's what our patients have taught me the most is it can wait. My bath will still be there in 5 or 10 minutes whenever, just it can wait.
And what a powerful message coming from somebody whose life on the work side is so incredibly full of busyness, for you to give yourself permission to be in the moment and to take those moments to yourself is very powerful. Krystal, thank you so much for sharing your piece of our work and our mission with our listeners. You have been listening to Hospice of Central Ohio's Listen and Learn podcast. Our guest today was Krystal Glancy, who's one of our patient care specialists. If you have been moved, and I'm sure you have been by her words and by the conversation today, to learn more about how you can volunteer with us, please contact us at hospiceofcentralohio.org or give us a call in volunteer services at 740-788-1404. Thank you so much for joining us today.